Hello and welcome to a second thoughts overview of Tzarina Katarin of Kislev. As it's common for these videos, I went through the initial turns to just get a sense of how the faction plays out, its weakness and strong points. So a disclaimer is necessary. This is not supposed to be an in-depth guide, rather a basic overview that will help you get started, regardless of the difficulty, by the way. It is time to play Tzarina Katarin of Kislev. For your short victory condition, we will need to have at least 600 supporters, which implies that we would confederate the Orthodoxy as well, and to occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. A rather easy one to do, it's pretty easy, straightforward, but it has a lot of good replay value, since you can expand almost anywhere you like, basically. Should we achieve this, the reward is +3 hero capacity for all heroes. As you heard me say, it's great for you to avoid having to build too many buildings to arrange slots for heroes and to carry out into the mid to late game. Now the long victory campaign victory, it depends. It changes a little bit things. So it becomes harder and you need to achieve the short victory conditions, occupy, loot, raise or sack 70 different settlements, and then to destroy the war host of the apocalypse, the Legion of Chaos. You can see in the minimap there how far away these are. The ecstatic legions, this is the closest one to your starting locations, not difficult. And the fecundities, which is also close by. So two of them are pretty far away, the other two are pretty straightforward and close by, let's say. So not a big deal, but still it becomes much harder than the short victory, of course. Now long victory, it gives you +10 to hero recruit rank, which is excellent to ensure that your heroes are always decent out of the gate. Now Tzarina is the ruler of the Ice Court. She earns devotion from successful Frost Maiden hero actions. She gets +6 controls, so less likely rebellions with this lady. Hero recruit rank +3 just for Frost Maidens. I would love if this was for all heroes, it would be much better, but okay, it's nice. And the Ice Court training duration -2 turns. It's all around the Frost Maiden hero, basically, and all the mechanics, so yeah, be sure to use them effectively. As for climate, it's not really that good or bad. I mean, you have a great area that you can expand to without, having too many issues with climate, but you will always have to expand into the north to at least clear out those pesky chaos factions that you need for the long victory. So yeah, this is not one of the easiest factions to conquer the map with, and of course you still have those penalties that you need to suffer from, so be wary of that. Not the easiest faction to overcome and get all the map with. We also start in a fairly difficult starting location. There are plenty of enemies nearby, including greenskins, Norska factions, even your own if you're not careful, with chaos coming in and other chaos factions coming in as well. There's Draika nearby, so a difficult expansion path without running into further enemies. Typical expansions, of course, to control all of this Kislev generalized area. Then into the north, south is also possible, it depends how the empire is doing. East and too much into the west is not really that advisable. Of course you can conquer some of the mountains here, but it's not really advisable to go into the Badlands, for instance, there, and into those the interim between these mountain paths. So yeah, you have a one settlement province, which is interesting. It has a lot of slots, building slots, but it has several special buildings, more on that later, and it will require careful planning of what to build there, honestly. Diplomatically, we are a part of the Order Tide Empire, the Dwarfs, the Britonia and High Elves, and also faraway Cathay is actually all good allies. They're all good allies that you may have in your campaign. Now, Chaos and Norska, Skaven up to the north here, Greenskins here, Wood Elves, Vampire Counts still for sure become your enemies, so all with a variety of playstyles to face up against, nothing that the Kislev armies can't face. But still, for outposts, you'll probably be limited to the Order factions, such as getting, for instance, artillery from the Empire factions, the dwarves, some infantry as well, and the artillery, and also the flying units from Bretonnia if you manage to get there. Of course, you can also try to do this with high elves, for instance, but possibly Bretonnia would be the easiest one in the beginning as well. As for mechanics, you have devotion, and this allows you to consume that devotion to gain followers. It's also similar to rights. Let me show you in the Motherland menu here. So you can invoke by using that amount of devotion, as you see there. For instance, I just did Saliak. I gain 1 supporter when getting your character rank, more growth, and casualty replenishment rate. Perfect. Urson, for instance, gives you the attrition to enemy armies within your territory. You can see on the right there. And 5 supporters when occupying a settlement, and the army ability, the Bitterness of Winter, which is pretty decent actually. Now Daz gives you just some more income stuff. It's almost income based. Gains supporters when constructing a building, so it's useful when you're constructing a lot of buildings. When you're finishing up a lot of buildings, just invoke this to benefit from those supporters. And then when you're fighting a lot of battles, this is the most adequate one, probably Tor. Generates 2 when fighting a battle. Army ability, the Wrath of the Bear, pretty cool one to use. And also melee attack plus 5% to all armies. That's decent. Now, why the supporters? So supporters are sort of a race that you need to go for in order to later on achieve the possibility of confederating with the enemy, in essence. So I never lost this race, by the way, so I have no idea what happens if they reach it first, but maybe you guys can tell me. But still, in essence, as long as you're getting these numbers, you'll be getting these small buffs. So for control, speed, leadership, as you see there, and more diplomatic relations with Kislev, this allows you to, have a better way with the other Kislev factions, not with the Orthodoxy, of course, but also helps, of course. And then finally you get to the Confederation. The only thing is that this part, as soon as you confederate, then, well, it's not that useful anymore. Of course, you'll benefit from those buffs, which is great. Now you can use coin, or you can use devotion to grant a lot of supporters. You can gain 50 supporters by just using money or using devotion. It's up to you. Okay. Now, in terms of the other mechanics, we have the Ice Court mechanic. Now, this is where you can, I already started one here so that you can show you. This is where you can train spellcasters before they can be recruited. So instead of just recruiting a Frost Maiden hero, for instance, or an Ice Witch Lord, you need to train her first. And the difference is that you can choose what type and what path would it have, and the traits that it will have. So basically, I can choose whether I want a Frost Maiden of Tempest or a Frost Maiden of Ice. Let's just choose Ice for now. And the idea is that later it will have some more traits that I can choose, and then I can base some army compositions based on that, because they'll benefit, like reduced upkeep for Ice Guards, for instance. So basically, that's how you're going to build up. It's a very interesting system. I love it. Finally, we do have the Adamants. The Adamants is, as soon as you have, you can assign one for every 2 provinces you have, so you can never have one on each province. And then the idea is that they will have some effects, such as, for instance, this one has some effect on corruption and effect on income. This one has corruption and control. So depending on the ones that I would have an issue with, I would assign them. Right now I'm trying to make money, so I'll probably just assign Igor here. So suddenly it will have some effect on the income. Of course, later on, the Ataman can be even recruited as a lord, which you may try to build him up as he goes and levels up. He'll have some more traits, of course, and you can choose those, and those will affect the severely how everything plays out. Like more income from buildings, more or less construction cost, or army buffs, etc. So you can always choose and use the Ataman as a general, although most likely I will always use him for staying on the province and increasing that province. Now, a sort of mechanic on its own is the 3 cities of Kislev. Let me see if I found the other one. Yes. So it's Kislev, Leningrad, and Prague. They're all their own province, okay? And they have plenty of specific buildings assigned to them that you can build. And they're excellent and almost a necessity to controls to ensure a good domination of the mid to late game. Now, another noteworthy one is that you need to control the city before you can even go here into the tech. The third layer. You need to control that city, otherwise it won't allow you to tech up to these ones. As for province edicts, we have a control and decrease of the enemy movement range one. We have some income from all buildings, always good. Some hero recruit rank and less recruitment cost for heroes, as well as corruption and chance of plague spreading. So awesome for when you want to recruit those heroes, you can just change that. You know that you're going to have a hero there with the ice court mechanic, so you can just recruit her with even more ranks. And then we have the recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity. Note, this is +2, much better than, for instance, the Empire one and others similar to this, so beware of that. Note the lack of growth here and even research, for instance, which are typically very useful, and I like to have this. But you also should note that both the motherland has some growth there in these invocations. So of course that's the idea there. That's where you're going to get those buffs. And in addition, we have the army stances, so channeling, very basic for 10%. You can actually have more power reserves. Encamp, yes, I know, Tzarina. So you can also have Encamp, which gives you immune to attrition, enables replenishment and global recruitment pool, cost of 50% movement points. It's basically the same thing as most typically ones. So 50% move required to engage in raiding, immune to most attrition as well. Ambush, you get to ambush, but with 25% move penalty. Nothing to change here. So very straightforward and typical. In terms of buildings, quite a lot to go through. So Kislev has specific buildings, all of them quite useful, by the way. But however, you may not have enough construction slots to have those. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ones, and then you still need the military buildings, which is not cheap because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings that you need for full military, 4 of which need to be in the capital, as you can see there. Now, the buildings and settlements work differently in the Kislev area. So in the Kislev area, you have 3 major cities, Prague, Kislev, and Leningrad, and all the rest are minor settlements. Outside of this region, then it works similar to other factions. Now, I'll show you what I mean actually right now. It's much easier. So as you can see, these are all completely minor settlements, and then Kislev, the major one. Prague is also major, but all over here it's just minor settlements. Leningrad is also a major one, but everything else is just minor settlements. But then we start seeing the typical ones. You see, like with the province capital and then the minor settlements. That's what I meant. Now, as for infrastructure, let's speak. It differs from major to minor cities greatly. So, to major cities, you have a growth, recruitment costs and recruitment costs in armies in region, and then all armies buff. Then we have a growth and construction costs. So if you're constructing or if you're recruiting, you may want one or the other if you want to focus on that city. Then you have a major income building, which is crazy good. It not only gives you crazy good income, it also gives you income from markets worldwide, faction-wide, and income from trade tariffs. That's excellent. Then one of the best mixes buildings that I've seen. This gives devotion, support is generated, control, and unlocks the patriarch, less corruption. So if you're ever in trouble with rebellions as Kislev, honestly, just build this building. Sorry about that. It will help out greatly to you. Okay. Now it changes a little bit to the minor settlements. Minor settlements have these specific ones. They have the farm estate, which is income, growth, and less recruitment costs. Then you have the hallowed forest. devotion, casualty replenishment rate, ambush success chance, corruption and income from farms. Pretty decent. I mean, it's one of the best buildings on its own. It just gives way so much. Then you have a control and growth building, excellent one. We also have a devotion, supporters, control, unlocking the patriarch and corruption building, and then a straightforward income building that we have here with the markets. So pretty much you're always going to have great choices, both for growth. They have insane options for growth actually, just because they have several buildings that allow growth there. And so you're probably going to be one of the factions that are going to grow really fast. Now, in terms of the research, it's, let's say, average. It doesn't buff up too much units. That's my one deal with it. It has decent buffs here and there. It has decent stuff that you can get, you know, that's always useful, like campaign movement range, always useful, of course. It's not easy to notice how much it affects, but it does, of course. The one thing I dislike is that you always have to own Kislev, Leningrad, and Prague in order to access this second part of the this last part. At least that's how it used to be. I don't know if I still need it, but still, that's how it used to be, that you need to own the city, not to have access to these ones, but to have access to these ones. Okay. So yeah, in essence, that's it for the buildings. Quite a lot to learn to. It's difficult, but take your time with it. As always, we have our Lord and Legendary Lord skills, the caster or yellow line or combat line if you prefer, red line and or army buffs, and also the blue line or campaign buffs. Starting with Tzarina, she has split skills for both combat, you know, and her casting abilities, as well as some army abilities. For instance, she buffs ice guards as well, as you can see there. And she has some generalized more devotion, diplomatic relations, some control. This is excellent. So it always assists in having a lord that gives you some buffs like this. And then ward save 8%. So basically all her army, regardless of what it would always have ward save, which is an excellent skill to have, basically. Now, in terms of the blue line, let's jump a little bit here. It does have what I like, the reduced upkeep and casualty replenishment rate. Reduced upkeep, you may see 9%, but of course if you join with the 8% here, if you get this as well, that's a lot. And you can get, on the course of a very long game with 10 plus armies, you'll see the difference. You'll see that you can support the next one and the next one much easier. Especially depending on difficulty level. If you're a legendary, I kind of consider it a must as well. So the first line doesn't have too much, you know, just recruitment costs. Typically I'm not recruiting too many units, I don't lose them too much. So, you know, the control and corruption is something that Kislev doesn't suffer too much. So I'd always go for attrition. And this is because you'll have to invade places that it's unnatural to your faction. So yeah, with the attrition, that may ease up things. That's my choice in that. Now, in terms of the red line, it's one of the best, honestly. Up there with the greenskins, honestly. They just buff up good combinations of units, such as, for instance, here with the Tsar Guard and the Ice Guards. It's just both a holding infantry line, missile infantry, and also anti-large infantry. It's crazy. It's really cool, and it helps that you don't spend too many skill points on these on this, and then you can invest in the other ones, in the casting and everything else. Now, both the Patriarch and the Frost Maiden, they do have some abilities that assist the campaign and the army, especially the Patriarch. It does have replenished troops and also has a healing ability that you can choose. I always typically choose it, so I consider them a must in any army for sure. One note that I didn't say previously, tier 2 and 3 units are very useful even throughout the game. So as in, even Tsar Guards are definitely late game units for all mans, and Streltsy are always really good as a hybrid unit. So, you know, armor piercing, it's really cool. So don't forget about that, because you can always recruit them early and benefit them throughout the game. Now here we have all the red line skills for the Kislev armies. A good note is that there are great combinations, like I said, of armor piercing, missiles and anti-large, even in just a few skill points, which helps a lot. Now Tzarina Katarin, she buffs, let me put it here, she buffs mostly snow leopards, ice guards, so of course I have some combinations with those units, and then ward save for everything. You can see how effective they are in terms of red line skills, and you're getting nearly every single type of unit, you know, a single entity unit, anti-cav, cavalry that's also good against infantry, missile troops, anti-large infantry, so it's really cool. This army is actually one of the staple armies that I would consider. I'll use just the Tsar Guard shields to soak up any enemy missiles, and then my missiles. It's 8 units of magic armor-piercing missiles. They'll wreck nearly everything, and everything that it isn't, well, the bears and the elemental bears will take care of it. So, in terms of other armies, always with that thought in process, but I have the second choice, which is to go into the sleds. This is a more mobile army, basically, especially in the flanks, which also helps, you know, everything, single unit here shoots something, except Tsar Guards, and you can even, you know, just add more ice guards and that's it, and it will be a decent army. So it's always one of those choices that you can make, of course. You can see how, you know, again, red line effective these compositions are, even though they have plenty of unit combinations. And once more, just for the early game and even a sweeper army, you know, for you to get those units that you used in the beginning, you know, into a late army specific composition, this is what I would recommend. You know, like any Streltsy that you still have, or any Kossars armored Kossars that you still have, by all means you put them in these types of armies, and they'll be good sweeper armies for sure. This last one is one where I try to mix almost everything, you know, including the single entities, some cavalry, some of the missile troops, and then some armored Kossars. You can see how costly it is, so that's why it kind of is more effective that you actually go into elite armies instead of just trying a mixed composition like this. Overall, this is a great faction to have some fun with. Ranged faction without too much artillery though, but everything else is amazing. Everything synergizes so well. Devotion helps getting buffs, and then you also have these rights to apply. Then you get Confederation. Growth and income are fairly exponential because of all your buildings, and early and late game units are all top notch in their respective moments. The more you play, the more you feel that every decision that you've been making was actually detrimental and influential, which adds to the good feeling when one is playing. This adds to the good replay value, as the starting location alone, for instance, should provide different playthroughs depending what happens with the Empire, depending what happens with the Greenskins here, or even with other Kislev factions. Now, in terms of army, you have great hybrid infantry, best at it. Great cavalry, great single entities, good chariots. It does lack flying units and specific lores of magic. It has specific lores of magic, so you don't have access to the most streamlined ones. Still, they're good, but you may have to devote some attention to them. Replenishment value is great. Plenty of good ways to replenish your troops, which adds to how well this faction can actually start conquering once you get to the end. I believe now it is time to play and follow Tzarina Katarin.